Mythopoetic Narrative and Virtual Reality. Vanderbilt University and Professor J. Clayton and his intrepid grad students have offered students a course, Online Games, Literature, New Media, and Narrative, that approaches the topic of storytelling in multiple genres in the context of romance literature as it can be remediated in fantasy games. Our final assignment was to explore how we might remediate select portions of one of the poems studied in the class through the creation of a video game. This essay, as read as a voiceover in video, has chosen excerpts from Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem Ulysses to explore this task. There were three options to approach this final assignment, with option 2 being a presentation of relevant ideas in other media as storyboarding rather than an essay, and the third option to actually create the game. A disclaimer. This particular approach to the assignment falls into option 2, but in fact relies heavily upon my ongoing work in the area of virtual world building, in a manner that is significantly related to the entire subject matter of this course. In essence, a variation on the third option of this assignment is something I've been working on for several years. Therefore, the machinima and slides that here ostensibly act as a storyboard for a proposed game are in fact a version of the larger game I have been exploring through virtual world technology. This virtual world exists as a group of 15 islands known collectively as the Chevers. For elvish Sindarin lovers, the islands bear names like Estel, Enin, Minas, Caladanan, Reviair, Caladale, Erulith, Lotharinia, Lalaith, Elenath, Elenarda, Mirialorn, Linda Laer, Gilithil, and Karasad, Shiver. Professor Clayton's class touches upon common threads in romance literature, popular fantasy films, and specifically how these threads can be found in online fantasy games, in this case in the Lord of the Rings Online, LOTRO. The class approaches online games with the expectation that there is a set of rules, overt or hidden, and a set of clearly defined goals. Much like the romance quest, players in LOTRO explore the remediated world and various peoples created by J.R.R. Tolkien and engage in activities that are much like those of the characters in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, a play which, to quote its description in Wikipedia, quote, expands upon the exploits of two minor characters from Shakespeare's Hamlet, in which the action takes place mainly in the wings of Shakespeare's, with brief appearances of major characters from Hamlet who enact fragments of the original scenes. That's from Wikipedia's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead entry. As players embark upon various quests in LOTRO, their previous knowledge of the original narrative, or that remediated by the Lord of the Rings films, can be very helpful. In fact, the larger Tolkien universe is described in the Silmarillion, and furthermore, the larger mythic and folkloric stories and languages that Tolkien drew from can also be seen to enrich the experience of all three genres. This is true also of Tennyson's Ulysses. The Odyssey of Homer, of course, comes into play, and the ancient Hellenic mythos and worldview. As I mentioned in my disclaimer, I have already been designing what might be called a game that takes these sorts of issues into account. What interests me when using game technology to remediate folklore or myth or fairy tales or romance literature are the possibilities for both mythopoetic creativity, to barely touch upon Tolkien's discussions of mythopoeia, and play aspects of mystery and ritual. Here's an interesting and relevant point raised by the Dutch historian Johan Huizinga, who wrote on the topic of play. Let us consider for a moment the following argument. The child plays in complete, we can well say, in sacred earnest, but it plays and knows that it plays. The sportsman, too, plays with all of the fervor of a man enraptured, but he still knows that he is playing. The actor on the stage is wholly absorbed in his playing, but is all the time conscious of the play. The same holds true of the violinist, though he may soar to realms beyond the world. The play character, therefore, may attach to the sublimest forms of action. Can we now extend the line to ritual and say that the priest performing the rites of sacrifice is only playing? At first sight it seems preposterous, for if you grant it for one religion, you must grant it for all. Hence, our ideas of ritual, magic, liturgy, sacrament, mystery would all fall within the play concept." Unquote. It is this last sentence that fascinates me and informs my approach to a video game, in this case based upon Ulysses. Quote, "Our ideas of ritual, magic, liturgy, sacrament, mystery would all fall within the play concept." Unquote. It is possible then for a game to explore or remediate sacred texts, magic, mystery, and ritual in a way that is hopefully neither sacrilegious or trite. Let's assume that this game takes place in a virtual world based upon a fusion of mythic and romance genres, a world between the worlds, if you will, a world that fuses mythopoetics based upon Tolkien's world with both Celtic and Mediterranean myth and folklore. And let's add in what I will argue is the basis of every quest: knowledge of our individual relationship to something that inspires us and captures our imagination, and furthermore, a transformative journey that takes us from innocence through the underworld to encounter ourselves, including our dark side, and eventually to emerge, well, wiser than before we accepted the quest. In the larger informing Hellenic context, Tennyson's Ulysses would have been very familiar with the entire Greek pantheon. Obviously, in the Iliad and the Odyssey, Odysseus's life and experiences were touched by gods and goddesses like Athena, Ares, Poseidon, and Zeus. My game remediating the Tennyson poem, then, might start before a large temple of the gods. An avatar would have already been created for players in this game, as it is housed already in an open-source spin-off of Second Life, in InWorlds. My avatar here is wearing a dress based on that worn by the hobbit Rosie Cotton from the Shire in honor of the larger context of this course. She enters a temple of the gods and can choose, by interacting with one of the statues, to explore the temples and symbols and archetypal meanings associated with each of the gods. An avatar could also simply walk through the temple and out another door, to explore randomly, to interact with other players, to attend a play held in the Temple of Dionysus, a theater, to listen to a poem read there, or even to just contemplate the beauty of a virtually remediated Mother Nature. Specifically, Tennyson wrote in lines 6 through 9 of Ulysses, "I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed, greatly have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone on shore." It is this drinking of life to the lees through travel that a quest in the Chevers might offer. Ulysses would likely have been familiar with Egyptian influences, greener shores, the opportunities that arise through adventure, the mysteries of Eleusis, and would even have some knowledge of fantastic creatures living beneath the sea. An avatar might encounter and interact with other narrative quests, that of Peer Gynt, for example, or Arthur, or the Fairy Queen, or characters from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Similarly, when Tennyson wrote in lines 12 through 15, "For always roaming with a hungry heart, much have I seen and known, cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honored of them all." A person embarking on a quest in this game would be able to encounter many different places and aspects of self as well. In virtual reality, both the world and the avatar can be a character in the larger story, and with the addition of co-created scenery and ad-lib spontaneous RP narrative, even more becomes possible. Tennyson wrote in lines 18 through 21, "I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch, wherethrough gleams that untraveled world, whose margin fades forever and forever when I move." How very like the virtual world that reses before us and glitters for a moment as we interact with it, before fading away as we approach something new. It is possible for the game to remediate the sense of fusion and impermanence as described in this section of the poem, and to do so as a feature of the personal quest, to know an archetype or one's relationship to beauty and travel as a lovely and temporary experience. Johann Huizinga also wrote that our point of departure must be the conception of an almost childlike play sense expressing itself in various play forms, some serious, some playful, but all rooted in ritual and productive of culture, by allowing the innate human need of rhythm, harmony, change, alternation, contrast, and climax, etc., to unfold in full richness." Unquote. The variety of places to explore, whether accessed through clicking upon the statue of a god or by random exploration, would allow for this sort of rich fullness and the embodiment of narrative in the virtual setting. The game I would design would allow for the exploration and creation of whatever the imagination might dream up, whether through simply walking through an area, through deeper interaction with what is found there, and through participation in events and even rituals that can take place in the virtual setting. Again, quoting Huizinga, quote, "The eternal gulf between being and idea can only be bridged by the rainbow of imagination." Unquote. I believe that while it is addictively fun to engage in structured quests which provide tangible rewards of hit points or virtual treasure or leveling up or slaughter of nasty orcs who wish to destroy all that is lovely in the lands of the free peoples of Middle-earth, remediation of the quest, of fantasy, of romance narrative in the virtual setting can also be an amazing and fulfilling experience that's limited only by the imagination. My world then would take as its underlying backstory, beneath such poems as Tennyson's Ulysses, a fusion of mythic and archetypal and folkloric characters, a between place, a liminal world of imagination and opportunity, where the most important rules are to explore, to not interfere with the explorations of others, and to learn to, like the aphorism associated with the ancient temple of Delphi, know thyself. An avatar undertaking a quest like that of Ulysses might even find in a fusion of mythic and cultural tales that a simple click on a telescope might lead even into the great frontier of the stars, leaping out of the terrestrial to sail beyond the bent to where the twin trees of Telperion and Laurelin still shine. To sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles. Ulysses, lines 60 to 63.